a beautiful girl in beautiful golden light. This is a series of photographs that I took quite quickly as she twirled her skirt. It was actually the end of the shoot, and she went off into the field and was just standing there twirling, and of course I took that moment to photograph her, and ended up being my favourite from the entire shoot. So there you go. So I pulled these out because it's yet again golden light where I'm shooting directly into it, and the images are quite hazy, and what we'll do is we'll start with one, and of course these have been synced already, and I will take it back to the original and then we'll sync them again. But I wanted to show you the series of work out of Lightroom. Lightroom is just so powerful, and before we get started, but let's get started. I'm not really sure which one to pick. I go through them all and I think, oh yes, I like that one or this one. They're all very similar, so I don't think it really matters so much. Someone will have one that they like better. I think I'll start working on this one. Alright, so let's press reset. Okay, and this is the original. Obviously there's lots of haze coming in. Sometimes people will say to me, oh, I can't shoot that, it's the light's wrong. In fact, for me it's beautiful. I can see the potential there, so we'll start working on it. Okay, so first of all, obviously I want to make this a little bit golden, and I'd like to add a little bit of red as well, so I'm adding some magenta in there as well. Okay. I'd like to add in some blacks. Yeah. But I also need to bring back the detail of the highlights and the whites. Later on we'll come back and we'll work on those, but for right now I'd like that to be all the way back. Now in bringing back the blacks here, I've actually put contrast back in the photograph, so I do need to raise the exposure a little. Okay. Might just bring it back up a little bit. I'm just looking for enough highlights and whites to show up the little highlighted areas around the grass without blowing out that sky. Okay, I'm going to add some vibrance, which saturates without saturating the skin tone, but I will also saturate using the saturation just to add in a little bit of colour there. Okay, now I would like to go down to a vignette, and let's just play with the amount. Okay. Okay, so here it is in Photoshop, and we're ready to go back into Lightroom and grab a different exposure, and after bringing out the highlights here in her hair and on her dress. So we'll work on that and bring it back in. Okay, so here we are back in Lightroom, and I'm going to raise the highlights this time and raise the white. And as you can see, it's brought back all this detail here. And it's actually quite grainy. So what we need to do now too is do some noise reduction. And when I do noise reduction, I do tend to do a little bit of sharpening. Alright, so a bit of noise reduction, a bit of sharpening, but I'm also going to just increase it a touch. Now I'm looking at the skin tones. When I've done that, it's turned her yellow, so I'm preparing her for taking her into Photoshop. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. All I've done is open the two files and dragged the light one up, and let's get to this one. And what I'm going to do is we're going to create a mask. So I've got this layer on top and I press the mask, which is just here. And now I'm able to Control I to invert that mask, and it goes back to the original. And this is the lovely one with all the golden depth into it. But now we can paint on the feel that we're after. So let's have a look at our opacity. We'll just make this fit on screen. Okay. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of this down and make it a big fluffy brush, and obviously press X to make it a white palette. And just slowly, as I always do, paint gently and slowly to bring this back. Now actually, I'm not really that interested in the detail of her coming back. So I've done that a little bit, but what I am more interested in is this detail here coming back. So now what I'm going to do is grab a bigger brush, a smaller brush I should say, and make the opacity quite big. Okay, so this is what I'm after. This beautiful golden hairlight, the rim light here coming through. And I'm just going to paint that back in at well, we're near 100% opacity. And I'll get a bigger brush now. I want to make sure it looks realistic. Alright. Now, through here as well, she's got some light falling on her. So I need to be careful with the shading of this. Alright. Just lighten up her a little bit here. Okay, so let's have a look at before and after. There we go. Now, I think that she might be a little too light just here. So what I'm going to do is grab the black brush at a very low opacity and just bring some of this back to darker. I think it's too light. Let's have a look. Okay. Bigger opacity. Easy as I go. Okay. All right. Okay, now we need to think about the overall feel of the photograph. There are elements within the photograph that cause me to think, oh, I really like to enhance that. Firstly, we've lost the detail of this gold bow here. This is actually gold, and she's got some gold on her dress, and she even has some gold on her face. If we go into this, let's have a look at another one in Lightroom. We painted a gold mask on her face. She was so adorable. So I'd still like to, even though this is a series of work, I'd still like to bring that back through the photograph as best I can. Obviously I'm not going to be able to bring back the gold here, but I'll be able to bring this back, and I think I'm simply going to do that by going to a hue saturation mask and saturating that right up, Control I to invert it, and I'll just grab a white brush, use the brackets to make my brush smaller, and using saturation to see if I can bring some of this gold back. It seems to be working fairly well. Okay. Just to make it obvious that it was there. This was a fun dress to make. It was part of another dress, and I just changed it a little to match with all the gold and took off bits, and I tend to do that sometimes. It was a lot of fun. Okay, so let's have a look there. Now I think we could even bring that up a little more. So I'm going to bring the opacity up. Just do a big one. There we are. Okay. Let's have a look. Okay, so now I'm looking at that thinking it's kind of gone orange, and I think that I need it to go a little less orange. Let's have a look. Make it go gold. So I've changed the hue as well in the opposite. Now if you need something yellow, look at the hue line here and you go the opposite of it, because it's actually yellow here, but when you need it to go yellow, you go the opposite. That's just how it works. So I think that brings that up a little. I might end up changing that back off yellow. So maybe we make it +2, just so there's more cohesion in the colour here. Okay. Now I'd like to make this one look more realistic. We've done some unrealistic ones where I've added the painterly effects with the oil paint. However, honestly, I do try and keep it a little bit realistic, somewhat. So I mean, this is really there. This light is there, and all I've done is enhance it in Lightroom and combine the exposures to bring out the rim light on her hair. So in regards to what I'd like to do now, I think I can see some slight discrepancies in the colours back here, so I might try and work on that, but we'll see how we go. Really, from here on you could just keep it, but you could have kept it at the Lightroom stage too. Okay, so what I'm thinking is we need to kind of coffee stain it. So I'm going to grab a solid colour. Now, I don't want it to be too saturated, but I do want to make it kind of a mocha stain. So let's see, I'll probably have to go back and change this, but I'm going to pick a brown and I'm going to go to soft light. Okay. So if I reduce the opacity to 31, that's just actually enhanced color, and all I can do is start bringing down that light too. Now the light's actually falling on her. If you look at the shadow of the trees, the light's actually coming in through here. When you I say it time and time again, when you work on directional light, make sure you're actually using the direction in which the light would fall. Okay. Now, I'm not really keen on how this has darkened this area, so let's play again, because all it's done is it's made it more contrasty. That might be better. Okay. As you can see here though, we have problems now again still with the contrast coming through. Alright, so I'm going to do another solid colour and make it very similar, but this time I actually need it to be a golden orange. Control I to invert it. Okay, and I'm going to grab a white brush and just brush some of that orange that we've lost through here. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is now increase the contrast, and I'll do that by simply doing a curves auto. Have you ever used the auto on curves? I find sometimes that this really helps. So I'm just going to go down to preset and go down to increase contrast, and it just adds a nice little contrast S curve there. Now obviously it's a little bit too much, and more so for me on the blacks. So I'm just going to raise that up a little, and then I'll reduce the opacity of that down. And it's actually raised the contrast quite nicely, except I don't like it on the tree. So I'm going to take that off there. Okay. So just going back, you can actually see there's quite a big difference in the before and after. So looking at the before, I wanted to just balance to see what light I brought in and what I had overdone. Sometimes going back to the original can be helpful. Sometimes it can be scary because you kind of go, oh wow, I've overdone it. But if you are worried that you've overdone it, I don't recommend going back and having a look. But I just wanted to see where the light fell on her here and how the light was falling to make sure I've kept it realistic. Okay, so lastly, I think what I need to do is just work on her hair. So we're going to go back to the file and just work on her hair. So here we are back in Photoshop, and I've flattened the file. Now, they say you shouldn't flatten too much, so just be aware of that. Now, I actually can see some color discoloration here, so I'm just going to do a hue saturation mask and discolor it and desaturate that. I tend to do that while I'm looking at what I want to do next, is I'll see things that'll grab my attention and I'll think, oh, that's just not quite right. For example, the hand here, I'm going to just grab a color balance and add a touch of red down there. Alright, okay, so, then let's start with the hair. So all I want to do is bring back some detail in her ringlets here. Obviously there's some movement here, so it doesn't need to be perfect. It would be nice to have some detail back there. Okay, so I'm going to do a new layer, and I'm going to get a brush. I'm going to make that color. And okay, now I'm going to grab this area here. Okay, and I'm going to grab my brush. Okay. Okay, and I'm just going to build on the areas that I want lighter. Okay. Okay, so she has some ringlets here. I want to make sure these come out more. Okay, we could even go a little lighter and just see if we can build on this. Okay. Alright, so let's go back to the original, and it'll be so different. You'll think, why did she bother doing that? And then we'll go into Lightroom. Okay. And this is before. And this is after. See you in the next video.